Good morning and welcome to the first ever Kentucky Workforce Healthcare Collaboratory. My name is LaDonna Rogers and I was appointed earlier this year to be one of 15 members of the Council on Postsecondary Education. I'm also the Executive Vice President of Engagement and Culture at TJ Regional Health in Glasgow. But today, I am excited to represent both post-secondary and employers to listen to today's conversations, and I'm very excited about what we've got ahead of us today. Kentucky, like many other regions across the United States, faces a unique set of healthcare challenges that impact the lives of all residents. These challenges are not merely just statistical figures or policy discussions. These are real-life issues that affect the well-being and the quality of life of all of our families. The Council's goal of this collaboratory is not just to shed light on the issues and the challenges. The light has been shed. We are here to inspire innovation, further collaboration, and cause deliberate action. They aim to foster a sense of unity among this mixed audience so that together we can strive for a Kentucky where healthcare is accessible, affordable, and of the highest quality for all the residents, regardless of your background or your zip code. And considering that education is a key factor in the driving force of change, there's no one better to lead us off today than Dr. Aaron Thompson. Dr. Aaron Thompson was named the 4th president of the Council on Postsecondary Education in 2018. He's an innovator, a collaborator, a thought provoker, and his leadership has pushed this state into a new era of higher education. As a first-generation college student from Clay County, Kentucky, he experienced firsthand the transformative power of a college credential. As president of the Kentucky Council on Postsecondary Education, he works to ensure that all Kentuckians have an equal opportunity to improve their lives through postsecondary education. But those of us who know him well know that one of his personal priorities is to build the healthcare workforce capacity in Kentucky. After seeing his hometown struggle with healthcare access, he dove in headfirst. He became a member of his local hospital board and quickly became chairman of the hospital board. He advanced quickly and served on the Baptist Health as chairman of their system governance board. He was instrumental in leading the system efforts throughout the pandemic and is finishing up his time as the past chairman currently. Throughout this experience, he experienced firsthand the nursing and allied health shortage and the impact that it had on our state's citizens. And it pushed him to further our state's progress and to expand healthcare access and services. Dr. Thompson's commitment for bettering Kentuckians spans across sectors, and it is driven by the collaboration and innovation of every person, every thought provoker in this very room. And that's why it is my absolute pleasure to introduce this morning's keynote speaker, Dr. Aaron Thompson.
Thank you. Good morning. You know, it's a privilege to be here in more ways than one. I'll talk about that in a second, of course. You know, more than anything else, the role as being the head of higher education for Kentucky, for me it meant to have the opportunity to do exactly what I wanted to do, right? Not really, but it gave me the opportunity to think about if Kentucky is really going to get where Kentucky needs to be, how do we get there? And how do we, in my case, have higher education do their part in helping us to get there? The idea that if you're going to have a strong economy, you can't have one without a strong, healthy, educated workforce. And you can't do that without having a strong higher ed system, but one that isn't isolated or insulated, but one that, in fact, is willing to share the stage with where the rubber meets the road. And that's what this is all about. And I'm here to celebrate with you. The collaboratory, to me, is about celebration, for us to enjoy what we've earned and what we've learned. But it's also going to be about, not resetting, but understanding what it means to now create a continuous process to really help us to get where we want to go. There's some good stuff that we'll talk about. There's some stuff not so good that we're going to use as our baseline to do more good stuff. And that's, in fact, what I enjoy by looking at this crowd, because we have I love the term mixed group. We may be a mixed group, but we're a mixed group with the same goal. And that, to me, is exactly what I hope to achieve even into my tenure on into the future here in Kentucky. I do want to recognize a couple of people, though. It's not on my agenda to do so, so I'm going to really screw it up a little bit because, there's some folks I'm going to miss. But I would be remiss if I didn't recognize, the people I work with every day, and that's our campus folk. We have with us Dr. Jay Morgan, who's the president of Morehead State here. Jay, good to have you on board in that neck of the woods doing the work you're doing. You got a big collaborator back there, a good friend of mine who I got to hang out with this past weekend. What a good time, Don Lloyd. Chris, appreciate the work. Innovation is happening all over the place. Do I have any other presidents here? Jay, you get the distinction. And that's what it's all about, right? Any more healthcare CEOs in the crowd? Stand up, sir. Let us recognize all of you. All those who are healthcare CEOs, we appreciate the work. Now, it'd be great if I could call out all of you because you're all worthy of being calling out, but if you know me, I don't remember names. I do know Derek Ramsey, you can't hardly forget. But there's a lot of you here who are recognizing exactly what we're trying to do in Kentucky. Mason from our independent colleges, all of the folks here have a particular goal to think about how we build on the 5 Ps that I'm getting ready to talk about. But one of the things I would be remiss if I didn't mention or call out Dr. Leslie Sizemore, who's been leading this work. I found her in the hills of Kentucky, by the way. Clay, she's from my hometown, Clay County. But the idea, Leslie has led this, and the thing I hear from all of you is how well and how good she is to work with. My goal today is to talk about the 5 Ps. And what I mean about the 5 Ps, when I took over higher education, what we wanted to do is to think about what we weren't doing, but also to recognize what our strengths were and the position that we were in to actually strengthen our weaknesses and strengthen our strengths. LaDonna, I appreciate the invitation to actually still be a part of Kentucky. She's my boss. I should give her more respect, right? Thank you, LaDonna, for your work. But the 5 Ps is exactly what we wanted to think about when we took over higher education. To think about, in the past, we had in my shop, which is Council on Postsecondary Education, really had this way of thinking about how we did business. And to be honest with you, most of us only thought about it within our walls. We use code words, I tell people, something that no one understood. Jody, good to see you here from Baptist. I would be remiss to have been the chair for the last many years. But we use code words, and no one understood those code words. So the idea that if we are, in fact, the driver of a good economy, then we were going to have to use words that crosses all lines where people could understand our nomenclature. And so we started thinking about how do we organize higher education in a state with a strategic agenda that all our institutions could buy into that understood how to reach across those boundaries. The first thing we did, we had to organize ourselves. So I took whatever the budget I had, whatever money I had, and I redesigned our organization to focus on partnerships. And those partnerships aligned in two particular areas that we hadn't done a very good job of focusing. We were really good working with each other in partnership, but when we started thinking about the pathways that we needed to get to really build that economy and that workforce, how could we leave out our K-12 partners? And people ask me all the time, well, President Thompson, what does it take to build a stronger higher ed system? I said, it takes a heck of an early childhood system, right? You can't separate those pieces that are needed to get where you need to go. But we also heard over and over again people talking about the value of higher education or the lack of value that's in higher education. We heard over and over again people saying, well, college isn't important, you don't need to go to college. We could produce data all day long, and we did, in analytics, and showing you exactly why you needed to go to college, how it increased your income, no doubt, but also how it increased your quality of life. You have better health care. Good chance you won't even go to prison, right? So we knew we had the material, we had the knowledge, but why were we not getting it across? Only because we were a choir singing to ourselves. We were a place where we knew we had quality. If you ask us, we told you we had quality in what we did, the programs we had, the degrees and certificates we were producing. We told you that. Y'all just didn't listen, all right? So the best way I knew then how to talk about quality and build what we needed to build was to build our choir. And my job was to do everything I could to help us all to sing. Y'all are now part of the big choir, right? And part of what we needed to do in that then at CPE is to think about how we reorganize ourselves in that manner. So we not only created a K-12 division, we created a workforce division. And the first place we started was with healthcare. And that is to have our employers not on the back end getting what we produced and hopefully they liked them, right? But to get employers with us on the front end. So what do we need to produce right now for a healthy Kentucky, for a highly educated workforce in Kentucky? But not only what we need to do right now, but what we need to do 5 years from now and 10 years from now. That's what we're working on. This is a slow train, but it's going to take a whole lot of energy to get that sucker moving, right? And that's what we're doing. So the 5 Ps then, in the way we need to design our work is around our partnerships. It's around building the pathways. If you really want to build your workforce, we've got to start earlier than college. We've got to start building it earlier. And we got to quit talking about it, by the way. We've got to put it in the threads that we have, and that's the curriculum, that's the work-based learning, that's having employers show up to our schools and talking about what it means to be a physician or a nurse. And what kind of courses you're going to have to take in high school and what kind of grades you're going to have to get to do it. It becomes relevant then. So quality then is measured on the fact that the students we have will know they got something that they can use, that they're tied to with a value-based system, but also that the employers recognize that they have an employee coming from our institution that knows that stuff because they helped build that employee. That's what it means to really build a pathway. But we had to change our process, and that's what we're talking about. We had to create more capstones. We had to create more ways of making sure that our institutions had faculty that we could pay to do this work. We had to think about what it means for a student to increase their capacity to be a part of healthcare. So we changed our performance funding in higher education to focus on STEM health degrees. So if you produced one, you get a little more money. But we also knew that we couldn't leave anybody behind, so the process had to be built on a diverse pipeline. In Kentucky, if you look at the populations that are growing, they're brown. Many of them are more first generation. Looks a lot different than first generation I looked like when I was coming up. So we couldn't leave anybody behind. So in our performance funding model, we actually put in there a kicker if you're an underrepresented population or if you're a low-income population. Kentucky is a high-poverty state. Why would we create this and leave people behind? So the process had to be designed in a manner that was holistic. But we had to set our campuses up in a way that would allow everybody to come in and not just say you don't meet the criteria, but how do we work with you to build it? That's what equity is in our agenda. The inputs that are needed to get where we needed to go. But we also knew there were a lot of potholes that had been in place for a long time, whether they were policies, whether they were laws, or just plainly the way we've been doing business for the last 20 years. So potholes are going to be there, and they will be there, and our job is to fill those potholes as we come up on them or as we can predict them and do something about it. That's why it's important for us to make policies and decisions that are strategic based on the analytics and the data that we have now, but ones that are ever changing. We tend to use data in a manner that says, okay, we know we have this, so let's talk about the problem. Should be used in a way to fill the potholes. And that's what this collaborative is about. So we know that COVID-19 is with us forever. But Lord have mercy, you folk who are in here in healthcare, you know what? You know, we thought we were prepared for a pandemic, right? We're going to celebrate. So, boy, we got through that. We did pretty good. Wow. Getting through that was hard, but it taught us a lesson, or it should teach us a lesson. And that lesson should be that how do we prepare these frontline folk ahead of time? Now, I'm going to talk about toward the end of this conversation, you know, a elephant that's in the room, and that elephant is how do we retain them once we get them, right? And higher education wants to be a part of that. The idea that COVID did teach us in Kentucky what we needed to do for the future. So I'm asking us as we move forward together how we can work even on that. So as a point of celebration, but also as a point of looking at potholes, I will tell you that I'm proud to say Kentucky is number 2 in the nation in completion. We're happy about that, right? But we also have a declining undergraduate population. We have students that are just not there in some cases, but we also have a 47.8% college going rate from those that are graduating high school going into college. This is a pothole that we're going to have to work to ensure. So over the last many years, we've been able to increase our completion in many areas that are crucial. We're closing gaps faster than any other state. We've been able to educate those that in the past that hasn't been educated, sorry to say, in Kentucky. But we also recognize that once again, that doesn't mean that we have fixed things, but that we have to recognize then how we do it. And this is one statement to employers I want you to hear. The more a student sees what you're doing and understands what you're doing, the more value they see in their education. The number 2 reason why people still drop out in college after sophomore year is they no longer see relevance in their education. So we're going to be asking you to do what needs to be done. Another positive. We look at our healthcare, folks that in the past that we've left out, we're now bringing in to this pipeline. The focus that we have, the intention that we have, the money we received, I guess now, almost 2 years ago, and partnering with you all has allowed us to be prescriptive in the way that we look at the people that we need to get in the pipeline. And because of that purposeful movement, we've been able to actually increase those areas, but we're going to have to double down. So I will tell you in our performance funding model, we'll be recommending to the General Assembly this year that they increase that amount that will go to our universities if they, in fact, educate a low-income person. And not only that, if they educate a low-income person with a health degree, they even get more. So these are the things that we have recognized using data to get us where we want to go. When we look at our public and private campuses, 40% of healthcare graduates in Kentucky are not employed or working outside of Kentucky. If we get them, we're going to have to keep them. If we educate them, we're going to have to keep them. So these are all ways that we can think about, once again, the way we can turn these potholes into opportunities. We do have a lot to celebrate. We do, in fact, we're going to continue the celebration while we continue to work. But when we talk about the word innovation, it's amazing to me how people use it so loosely. Innovation is no more and no less being able to evaluate that box that you're in to figure out what you need to do differently or enhance what you're doing well. And then put creativity into it. That's innovation. How you take that outside of the box that you're in. If you're not doing that, it's not innovation. You can come up with a great idea, but if you don't give it legs, it's not innovation. And that's what we're talking about doing, which I love. This is, in fact, powerful to me. We started this out with an idea that we had a long time ago, and we were able to convince the General Assembly to give us $10 million to seed it. But we have 48 of you as our partners now in higher education. And you all have put in $50 million. That's a partnership. This is exactly the way we will be looking at doing business to the future. And Leslie later on will be giving you some numbers that I think you'll be proud of. Still can identify potholes, but we have a long way to go. Some pathways we've designed. You know, we created a new partnership in Manchester, Kentucky, where I'm from, with Southeast Community College and EKU that are doing those things that we need to have done. KCTCS has done a lot of those, such as they've done with St. Clair at Moorhead. These are the sorts of things that helps us to get where we want to go. And we've got tools. We have the dual credit scholarship. We have the work ready scholarship. We can work this with intention. Processes. House Bill 200 will benefit all the partners. And House Bill 200 will be something that is now looked upon, and we'll recognize Representative Fleming later on, but will be looked upon as a model for the nation. We'll be talking about that a little bit later on this week in DC. Pipelines. This is where we've got to create a better mechanism. We have to work with our P12 partners and our employers to create a better mechanism to get more of these students into a pathway, or we will not have a pipeline. And so that's an opportunity. I don't know if Amanda Ellis is here today, but if she was, she will tell you this is a big area that we're working on with her and Leslie. Potholes. We still have to tackle the migration issue. That's a big issue. I mean, that's one that I think is going to take some innovation. I look forward to working with you. We're going to have to increase the capacity to both train and hire graduates. It's not, you know, we talked about this yesterday in our collaborative meeting. You know, it is about how we increase the opportunity for students to be in clinical spaces to get out there and do this work. I'm proud to say that Kentucky was the first state before the pandemic to start talking about mental health, as we did as far as in higher education. And thank goodness we did, because then what happened? The pandemic came. So we started putting money into building capacity on our campuses before the pandemic. But Jay Morgan, how much more work do we need to do there? So much. It's bigger than what any of us ever thought. And it's growing. So how do we work together in that capacity to get where we need to go? And once again, we still have this value proposition statement that we need to make. So many people in Kentucky still don't see value in getting a credential that matters. That's a biggie. So once again, we're a good choir. I'm going to ask you to sing with us as we try to get this out. So there's some stuff that we're doing to address some of this. With our Kentucky Advising Academy, we're not just helping our students understand what they need to do, but we're working with the advisors, the counselors, and others inside of our K-12 to build their capacity and their knowledge to actually put in place these pathways and work on the pipelines. We also have a new academic program. It's not new anymore, Melissa Bell, who's our VP for academics back there, but we have our new program process where you get a program, if you're one of our campuses, if you show that you're working with employers on the front end. And we review those programs now based on that. Kentucky's the first state to go holistic into that space. Cultural competence. We have to remember everything we do, whether it's in the workforce or in higher education, that people that are working with us, students, need to understand that they belong there. It is about belonging. How can we increase this? Well, once again, this is an opportunity for a partnership. Kentucky Graduate Profile, I don't know if Janet Weiss is here, but Kentucky is the first state that have identified those 10 skills that are needed that employers say that they want, and we've identified them, and we are now putting it in the threads of our campuses. Not just giving them a little test on the end and say, now you've got this, but putting them in the threads so they're intertwined. And we intertwine this, the only way we do it, one of the essential elements that holistically encompasses this graduate profile is that employers are with us throughout the entire process. We're hoping to create, even with our general education, a way that people can identify these competencies and build on them. The other item we want is, hopefully before it's over with, every program will have a capstone. We heard from students when I went around the state talking with former college students, as well as current college students. Many are saying, well, I don't know what to do with this degree. So a capstone will help them to know, and we are building out our career services on the front end with our advising systems and not just on the back end where they're doing resumes and other stuff. All of these lead to what we consider to be the future of a healthy, educated workforce in Kentucky. So I got a few more minutes, I think, but I want to just say a few things that I think are important, at least for me to say. One of the benefits that I've had over the years is to be highly invested into the community. And that has given me what I think a really interesting look at what we should do in higher education, no doubt. But many of you who are employers, you may not have had that opportunity to be highly invested into higher education. We want to open that up to you, whatever that may be. The idea that it comes not just in a way of partnering just on what we're doing with the Healthcare Workforce Collaborative, but partnering where the rubber meets the road. So this is an area where we can't say, where we just can't go into our boardrooms, I can say that because I've been in way too many boardrooms, and say, what do we need to do to respond to what's going on right now with our bottom line? This has to be a way that we look into the future, strategically place dollars now that you may not know that you have to build on that future to where we won't have to spend what many of you spent during COVID on your traveling nurses, right? And what we know we need to do in higher education, and what we tell our General Assembly and our governor's office, When you look at it, yes, you've got X amount of money to spend, but if you don't invest into your only strategic opportunity, you will pay that money out in places you wish you never had to pay it out in. Prisons don't give you a return on investment. Just doesn't. Having a highly educated workforce that paid taxes, they do, because they're healthier. The idea that now as we move into this next generation, which is this year, of what we're doing, it is talking about how do we think about truly investing what we need to invest, not just money, but our time and effort in strategic processes to creatively think about what we can have here in Kentucky as a way of building these 5 Ps, or filling up the last P, right? And it's my pleasure to be a part of this conversation. And what I do know is that through the conduit of Leslie in this case, but all of our staff, we want to know what we can do better. We want to be able to create, once again, what we did this past year that we're celebrating, but that we have something next year to celebrate more of. Thank you all very much.